Save your breath, guys. It's time for our review on oxygen. Just don't waste all of your breaths, guys, because you will be exposed to the vacuum of space and you will die. Let's begin the review before I die too. Hope you enjoy.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm back with another video, and in today's video we're going to be doing the review for Oxygen. Now, from my first viewings for this episode, I have to say that I really enjoyed this episode because I really loved the writing for this episode. I think Jamie Mathieson did an absolutely brilliant job on writing this episode. I thought the concept with oxygen and how the spacesuits were not actually keeping the people in the spacesuits alive, they were actually killing the people in the spacesuits, which was so ironic, but I really was fascinated by that idea. And then the capitalism, where all of the business, corporal kind of side and corporal greed came up with the episode. Although it was really difficult to understand that within the first viewing, but then when I rewatched it, I really understand all of the corporal side and the capitalism side, where human matter has no value left and it's okay to die in space. And then it was really difficult to understand at first, but I understand properly on how that capitalism side came into the episode and how it was really much valued to the end of the plot. And I thought the overall plot of this episode was absolutely superb, really fantastic. And so I will be doing the capitalism side a bit later on towards the end, because I feel like I really want to spend more time on that. But I think we'll start off with the main supporting cast of the episode, which the Doctor, Bill and Nardole were absolutely amazing. Well, apart from Nardole, which I'll get to him a bit later on, which is the thing that many people will be saying about how Nardole wasn't really too good in this episode, or we might as well just move on to him right now, because I felt that his performance in this episode, now this will probably dislike a few fans. If you're watching this right now, you could probably be controversial, what I'm going to say right now. I felt that Nardole in this episode was absolutely really great. I didn't even dislike him, I didn't find him irritating. I generally find him as a brilliant character in this episode. You may be thinking, what? You find him brilliant? Nardole, brilliant in Oxygen? Yes, I'm not really mucking this up, guys. I generally felt that Nardole was really good in this episode, because I saw much of his purpose, and the way that he was so afforded to the Doctor in the ending was so fantastic. I've never seen Matt Lucas in anything that he's done in his career. I've never even seen him be so authoritative like that to the Doctor, and even in Doctor Who. That was probably the best scene that I've ever seen Nardole having so much authority and just showing what he means to the Doctor and what's his purpose in Doctor Who, that he's trying to keep the Doctor on off world, and the Doctor has an oath to keep, a promise to keep, and Nardole's trying to prevent the Doctor from not even guarding the vault. Nardole is trying to follow the Doctor's orders by keeping the Doctor on world and looking after the vault. And I really liked the beginning of the episode where Nardole was being very authoritative to the Doctor, that you cannot go on off world, you have to keep guard of the vault, and that I know you're missing space, but you have a certain job, you have a promise to keep, and you must not disallow or dispromise your actual promise. And I felt with Nardole in this episode, although he was on the space station as well, I very much felt a bit light-hearted to his character a bit more, because Nardole is a very unusual character, which many people will have their dislikes and likes about Nardole, but most of them will obviously be dislikes. However, I really enjoyed Nardole in this episode, because although he had the one or odd line of a line becoming funny, and he was really being so sarcastic to the Doctor, I really like Nardole being so sarcastic and really quite funny, because it makes me really enjoying with the episode, and it makes me wanting to shout, go on Nardole, you can do this, you can do a brilliant job in Doctor Who. It's like I'm trying to give him so much confidence, and as I saw in this episode, I felt that Nardole really much understands the Doctor as who he is, and I felt that he really had a really great soft spot for the Doctor, and he really was getting on the Doctor's nerve, but it was only to the point where Nardole was trying to get his point to the Doctor that you must keep your promise, you must guard the vault, and the way he was so authoritative to the Doctor in the end was so unbelievable. It was something I've never seen Matt Lucas do before at all. It was so different for Matt Lucas to experience being so authoritative to the Doctor. I felt that was a real highlight of his character, and I'm really much interested to Nardole's purpose in Doctor Who now, because I felt this episode was an ongoing point to find out more about his character in depth a bit more, because he will be in the next episode called Extremist, and I'm really much intrigued to see his position in that as well. And within these remaining episodes, I'm hoping that maybe we can get something else from Nardole, a bit more to his purpose in Doctor Who, his character a bit more. And although he's been quite of annoying character at times, I really much enjoyed him in this episode because he was really authoritative, which I liked. He was very sarcastic, which obviously makes him really funny. And then he had the one or two on odd line that was trying to be funny, but it didn't really work out to be funny. So many fans will probably say that, oh yes, his jokes are not really funny at all. I get that, that's fine. But the way that he was so authoritative to the Doctor was just the point that I was so hooked up to Nardole. And he definitely proved a point on his purpose and what he was there for in Doctor Who. And what I kind of see that the pattern is with Nardole in the entire series is that Stephen Moffat is actually putting Nardole in positions where Nardole is actually needed to basically build up the story a bit more, to build up the series a bit more. I mean, he wasn't really just in the entire first 3 episodes, just in there, because if he was introduced to all of the other episodes, then he would be a bit wasted just being on the sidelines. I mean, Nardole didn't really need to be in those episodes until to the point where he was actually needed. And I think if Stephen Moffat can continue to do that, to basically have Nardole appear in episodes where he's not really needed at all, but if he is needed, then put him in there. I would really much like to see more of that, because I think that will really excite fans a bit more, because it will have more episodes where Nardole's not included. However, I think that with Nardole included in Doctor Who, we will definitely much find out more about his purpose and his character a bit more. So I'm really fascinated by what's coming up for Nardole. But again, for this episode, I thought he was, again, brilliant. Let's move on to Bill. Now, Bill, I very much have to say that I really am enjoying her in Doctor Who, because in this series, she's been absolutely fantastic so far. With all of the episodes that she's appeared in, her performances have been absolutely outstanding, to the point where she is almost going to die in this episode. This was the first actual episode that, although she actually saw somebody die in Thin Ice, she was creeped out in Knock Knock. In this episode, she has to fear that she's actually going to die, and this is the actual focal point, that she is actually being threatened and she's actually in danger of actually being killed or being dead by these space zombies. And I thought Bill's performance in this was absolutely incredible, even to the point where Bill was so emotional when she found out that the Doctor was blind, and I saw so much emotion coming out from Bill. The Doctor is Bill's only hope of getting out of this certain situation that she's in, that she's actually been left out to die and be killed off by these zombies, where she's not really actually dead until the last minutes of the episode reveals that Bill's not actually dead, or we thought she was dead, but she was in actual danger in this episode, which I was really hooked up to, because all of the episodes she was merely in the more issues kind of concept. She was introduced to the future, the past, and she was really experiencing more of her moral issues. But now she's really experiencing her danger in these episodes, where she's actually been threatened by many extraterrestrial creatures, and she's actually been threatened by the one thing that really creeps us out at the end of the day, at the end of this episode: space in general. Space in general, the concept of it, it's just unbelievable. The fear of space, where you've got no air whatsoever, where oxygen does not even exist in space. It just creeps the hell out of me, and also made Bill so intimidated and so petrified that she was actually going to die when the air was actually going to be removed from the decompressoring place, where the airlock was sucking out all of the air and Bill couldn't get a helmet on, and she completely passed out. And this is just one of the best things I love about this episode, where Bill was actually suffocating in the room without no helmet whatsoever, and the doctor was just doing so much just to help out Bill, and that she completely passed out and suffocated right in front of us. And then we saw all the blurry, envisioned impaired kind of, you know, blurriness, and then we saw the lack of hearing, the lack of sound, and it was such of a great editing kind of process, and the direction they went with this was just so fantastic. I think the scenes where she was just so blind, she couldn't really see anything, her vision was impaired, she couldn't really hear anything properly, and that everything about that scenes, or those couple of scenes, were just absolutely amazing, beautifully directed, and to the point where it kind of reminds us is that if we were in Bill's shoes, just looking at everything else, we would have that kind of same thing if we weren't really wearing a helmet and we were completely sucked out of space. And it's just to the point where we experience everything in Bill's eyes, in her point of view, and it really makes us really relate to her, as she is the most relatable character that Doctor Who has ever had. And we're already in episode 5, and we can certainly say that so far Bill is even better than Clara. Although Clara and Capaldi, I really like their chemistry together, but to separate Bill and Clara as two different companions, Clara is a bit more two-dimensional, and I see Bill as a three-dimensional character, because you've got her side of where she's really interested to everything. She's so fascinated by everything else, and she's really scared when it comes to the things that really creep her out, like the kind of decompressuring of the air, where she's, you know, completely is so scared, and she's breathing so panicky, and she's breathing so quickly, and that the one thing that you must not do is to breathe so quickly, because the more you breathe, the quicker you die. And it's to the point where Nardole mentioned that you either relax or you die. Simple as that, but just keep breathing. And I felt that from Nardole, just saying that if you breathe more quicker, you die quicker. And that's what I really liked. And I felt that Bill was really petrified of that. And the way that she was just so petrified of where the zombies were coming towards her, and she was breathing more heavily and more faster, that's what really scared me the most, that Bill was actually going to use up all her breath, and she was actually going to be killed off by the spacesuits, not just by the zombies as well, but also with the spacesuits as well. And this is the one thing that really was more of the irony in this episode, that the spacesuits is the one thing in space that keeps you alive, but instead in this episode, it's actually the one thing that actually kills you off in the episode, because the spacesuits are designed and programmed to keep and save the oxygen as much as possible, to save and preserve the oxygen, but rejecting and getting rid of the organic matter that are living inside the spacesuits, in generally the people. And so what the spacesuits are actually doing, they're actually just removing all of the oxygen within the suits, just consuming it and trying to preserve the oxygen, and just basically rejecting all of the organic matter within the spacesuits. And I feel that's really interesting. It's such a fascinating concept that I really like, and I really like Bill in this. I think that she was so scared. I really saw on how we would react to her if we were in the same situation. This is the same reaction that we would have when we're in space. And we see Bill as such a relatable character. She's way better than Clara, and we see Bill as probably one of the best companions that we've ever had, to be honest. I think within Stephen Moffat's era, I think Bill has to be the best companion we've ever had. And she's so relatable, she's so realistic, she's so real, not like all those fantasy kind of companions that we've had in the past. She is the one person that is so relatable, and we can all relate to her scares and her reactions to everything that she experiences, the past, the future, space itself. The one thing that is so threatening in this episode, space itself. It's the one thing that keeps us so intact, but it makes us so petrified that space is the only thing that really creeps us out in this episode. Jamie Mathieson, with his brilliant writing, is taking the one thing that we all rely on, and that's oxygen. And taking that idea on removing all of that oxygen and using the spacesuits to his advantage was a really great plot twist, and I really loved the writing of this episode. I think the writing was just absolutely spot on for this episode. I just really love the concept of just that space is the actual threat, and just being in space, the dark matter, you see nothing but just a void of blackness. Feel like that when you go out in space with no spacesuits whatsoever, if you try and consume your breath and hold in your breath for such a long time, I know a reference that of deep breath, how long can you hold your breath for? Do not, and I specifically say do not hold your breath while you're in space, because what happens? Your lungs will blow up and you will eventually die. So the one thing just to do is to keep breathing. But how can you do that when you only have a certain amount of breaths? That's really tricky. You're trying to consume as much oxygen as possible, but you only have a certain amount of breaths left. And the way that oxygen is seen as a currency in this episode just really intrigues me. And the way that merely in the near future, would this same thing happen to us, where we will have to buy oxygen from the future and just basically use it up wisely? Otherwise, if we run out of money and we can't buy any oxygen, we will eventually die. And so I really like how the concept that oxygen is actually a currency, and just the whole fact of space being the danger mark and being the actual villain itself, it's just so ingenious. I think the writing is just brilliantly done to perfection. Now let's move on to the Doctor. I thought the Doctor in this episode was really fantastic. I thought he was really fascinated, he was really interested, and he was really much more the focal point that I really identified in this episode. That he was really keeping everybody intact. He was merely like the person in charge, keeping everybody together and trying not to waste all of the oxygen. He felt like the person in charge, which the Doctor obviously feels like that he's always the leader who's trying to save everybody's lives, and he's probably the one person that you're trying to save all of your breaths of oxygen, and he's like the one person that can keep everybody alive, and you must trust him no matter what. And so that's really what we see with Peter Capaldi as always as the Doctor. But overall in his Doctor, we've definitely seen a very mismatch of personalities with the Doctor. Although in Series 8 he was very dark, I really love Series 8 just because of his dark Doctor. And then the BBC felt that it was like too dark of a Doctor for him, and then they moved on into Series 9 where the Doctor was a bit more light-hearted. That didn't work. Then they decided to combine the two and make up the Doctor's personality in Series 10, and I really like that. I mean, I would rather have that sooner or later than rather have that at the start, because it really felt more of that the Doctor could really understand who he is. He can understand that the dark idea didn't go well, but I felt really connected to his true Doctor. I love the lightheartedness within Series 9, but many fans didn't feel that the lightheartedness suited him, his Doctor. But then they combined the two and kind of felt and found the Doctor's true personality within this series. And even to the point where he becomes blind in the episode, basically giving up his entire helmet for Bill to keep her alive. He's risking his life for Bill, and it's just a way that the Doctor always sacrifices himself for his companions to keep them alive. It's so common by the Doctor to do that, and the way that he sacrifices himself in these situations where he becomes blind, it's something that we've never really seen the Doctor do before. Although we've seen the Doctor become like vision impaired in like in 42 I think it was, where he had like, he kind of took in like most of the heat in his eyes, and that really reminded me of that episode like 42, and reminded me of what the Doctor sacrificed for his eyes. And I really didn't see this coming, to be honest. Although the blindness of the Doctor was an unusual thing, but many people were trying to think, right, how did the Doctor become blind? How did this thing come about? Like, how did he become blind? Well, if you just stick by me, I actually have a genuinely brilliant explanation on how did the Doctor become blind. If you really want to know how the Doctor became blind, then just listen to my science lesson just for a moment. Now, you saw in the episode, in the beginning of the episode, just before or just after the rolling titles came out, the Doctor was doing a lecture about space. And I noticed that the Doctor mentioned about you boil at a certain temperature. Your liquid inside your body boils at a certain temperature, less than 100 degrees when you're in space. And it really reminded me back to the preview where at a certain temperature you don't freeze, you boil. And it really reminded me that in your eyes and your body, when your eyes need water to retract and to keep them fresher. If you don't do that, then your eyes are going to be so crusty around the outside, and you don't really want that. So you must keep blinking in order to retract the water from your eyes. And the way that I honestly found out this explanation was so genius by me. I can't believe I actually made up this explanation, but I think it's generally true, to be honest. The way that you retract your eyes, you need water to keep them alive and just to keep them completely fresh. You don't really want them to crust up. And the way that I carefully thought about this is that the water in your eyes, when you're in space, it boils less than 100 degrees. And so when you don't freeze, you boil. So all of the water, all of the liquid inside your body, even your eyes, the water in your eyes boils. And what does boiling create? Steam. And what does that steam do? It kind of builds up into your digestive system, or I don't know. But one thing it does certainly do to your eyes, it covers up your eyes. And with that steam covering up your eyes, you cannot see a thing. And that's how the Doctor became blind in this episode. Generally enough, how did I came up with that explanation? I'm generally taking up so much science lessons just to know that. I've just really given out a great explanation on how the Doctor became blind. Wow, I should really be given like an A star for that kind of explanation. Really was. I think that's the best explanation I've ever done for how did the Doctor even become blind. That's really of an explanation that I'm really proud of, because it's simple science. What happens when water boils? It creates steam. And what does the water, when it boils in your eyes, it creates steam. And in that water, it covers your eyes, and that prevents you from seeing anything. And that's really how the Doctor was blind in this episode. So that's really the explanation of how the Doctor became blind. So now you know something every day. And I generally believe that's a true fact. Obviously, spacemen are not going to go outside into the vacuum and just basically look out in the air with like no spacesuits or no space helmet whatsoever. They're not going to do that, obviously not. But just from the Doctor's sake point of view, it's where he sacrificed himself for his companion. And it's very common of the Doctor to do that, because he is much of a different kind of person. He's a Time Lord, and he's a very different person to everybody on the space station. And he felt that the Doctor, it was his own little personality. It was his dignity to give up or sacrifice himself for going into the vacuum with no space helmet whatsoever, trying to stay outside as long as possible to bring Bill back inside the space station was so brave of him. I really saw the true braveness and true confidence and courage from the Doctor, but also saw the true sacrifice that he took. And although he was blind for most of the episode, for the last 10 minutes of the remaining episode, I thought he was generally fine, okay? He was just really okay, just typing stuff on the computer. Now, just mentioning on about the supporting characters were okay. I didn't really mind them at all. I felt the black woman, or I'm not trying to be offensive, okay, but I just felt that she was very annoying, and she didn't really trust the Doctor a lot. And then we had most of the crew were very much trying to be in control of the situation, where the Doctor was merely trying to understand where everything's going wrong, and they have no idea what's going on, and the Doctor's trying to explain them in simple details where they don't understand. And I felt that the person who was actually blue, and Bill was really fascinated and was like, whoa! I don't know, it's to the point where you see somebody that's completely blue and looks like a Smurf. However, I'm not trying to be offensive or stereotypical, but I wonder if that person's name was actually called Peter, because I really want to name this now. I'm just wondering, because I think if that person was called Peter, I would have called that person Blue Peter. It's a simple joke, it's just what happens just comes to mind. And even Nardole has some friends that are bluish. Oh, I really would like to meet those bluish friends of yours, Nardole. I really would do. The crew, obviously the supporting cast, were really just there just for the standby kind of crew that were really being taken over by these space zombies, and I thought the crew were just definitely okay in this episode. They were not really majorly exciting about them. There was nothing really going on with them. They were really much the kind of your simple, your run-of-the-mill kind of space crew that were just being attacked by space zombies, and they were trying to solve out what's the problem here. And that's basically about it with the supporting casts. But the space zombies just look creepy as hell. They were absolutely amazing. And I thought the intro just before the rolling titles was just so fantastic. I really loved that little intro where one person was speaking something so lovable to the other person, but that person couldn't really hear because of the radio problems, and then that person completely died from the zombies that completely were kind of floating around in space, and then landed on the space station and then attacked this woman and then attacked the other person. And it was just so shocking just to see their creepy little faces. And even when the Doctor, Nardole and Bill went inside the space station and found a random spacesuit that basically had its helmet just popped open, I felt that was a very unusual thing, that nothing would be inside that suit, but it would merely feel like that, wow, it's just a walking dead spacesuit, that nothing's in there. That's really creepy. And just the visuals of the creepy masks of the zombies just look incredible. I mean, the prosthetics just look absolutely incredible. It's just they really look like real life zombies that you don't really want to go anywhere near them. And unfortunately, I thought in this episode Bill was actually going to die in this episode. Funny enough, she was actually going to die, and I felt that her emotion, that when you can actually feel like that you're going to die by zombies. And we saw a few little pictures of Bill's mum, and that she was very panicking, very petrified and scared. And that's kind of the reaction that we would get if we were attacked by zombies, and we were literally thinking that this is the point that we're dead, and this is the point where we die, and we want help so badly that you call for your parents or you call for somebody to help you. And just to the point where her reaction of just shouting, "Mum, please answer me," it just felt so emotional just to see Bill just reacting to that she's actually being transformed into a zombie. And that's absolutely so terrifying, but it made me feel like that's actually to the point where this is actually the first episode that we see Bill in proper danger. This is actually the first episode that we see Bill actually being almost like killed in this episode, but unfortunately in the end she was actually dead at all. It made us think that she was dead, but no, she was actually not dead at all. But this is the point where capitalism side comes into the episode, and I really loved how this plot really tied up with the entire episode, that there was no rescue ship at all. It was merely just a replacement ship that they were trying to get many ships to come and help them, or the remaining astronauts that were stuck on the space station. It was not really a rescue ship at all, it was merely a replacement ship. So what it actually thinks about the droids, or kind of like the astronauts in this episode, when I mention about droids, or androids or clones, it makes me think that maybe could this be like a recurring, almost like something like in a movie, that it reminds me of something that I've seen before. It merely like somebody's doing their work or certain job, or what happens if that certain person dies, the business or their company basically, instead of sending the same old in different astronauts and trying to wait for so long so that they can find a suitable astronaut to continue the work, basically they create so many clones of that original person, and they basically just send, the company send all of those droids to the space station and then continue to work over and over again until the next one dies, and then the whole process can repeat over and over again until the entire aim has been achieved. And that's really what I think about the episode. It's merely to that point where drones or clones are being completely sent by the business, and they're trying to make a good profit out of it. And I really like how they introduced business into this episode, and how it was very difficult to understand when seeing it for the first viewing, but then really understanding it in the second viewing, I really understand on how the business idea and how that kind of capitalism side came into the episode, that human life isn't worth anything now since we're all gonna die in the space station. And that's the whole crew were like, no, you're lying. And then the Doctor was like, absolutely true about that that he wanted everybody to die and that everybody on the space station had to die. The spacesuits are actually killing all of the occupants within the space station, and they don't really know that the spacesuits are actually going to kill them in the end. And it's to the point where the Doctor really understands of like what to do now and how to solve everything. That the Doctor was actually just typing something on a random computer screen, although he was blind. He was typing something or like basically making some adjustments to the cooling vents, and what this actually did, it actually made the zombies actually wanted to kill the Doctor and everybody else that was remaining on the space station. Actually, that if the zombies did kill the Doctor and everybody else, then the cooling things will actually, you know, do their job, and actually that will actually blow up the entire space station. And the zombies, or the space zombies, were actually programmed to keep the entire space station intact, because it was their spaceship all along, because the spacesuits are actually programmed to kill everybody else but don't blow up the entire space station. So although they want to kill the Doctor and everybody else, if they do kill the Doctor and everybody else, then their entire space station will blow up initially, and that will really create a big, tremendous loss for the company that the spacesuits are actually programmed for, on where they're designed from. And it's to the point where that's really, really interesting. Although it's really difficult that I've not really taken up business at like GCSE level, which really makes me truly inexperienced of what business is really all about. But I do understand this from Doctor Who's point of view. The zombies couldn't really kill the Doctor and everybody else because that would really destroy the entire space station, and with that space station being completely destroyed, then that will really have a big massive loss and a big massive effect on the company that designed the spacesuits. And so the space station was not supposed to blow up, and eventually it didn't really blow up because the Doctor actually mentioned that we were too expensive to live, and the zombies were just were about to kill them, but they completely stopped. And it's where the Doctor found out that Bill wasn't dead at all, and brought Bill back to life. In the plot, including just the business side on creating that big humongous loss, if the space station was destroyed, then the company will suffer a big massive loss in its history, and that's what the space zombies did not want to do that. And so they were under strict orders from the spacesuits to not kill the Doctor and everybody else. Otherwise, their entire space station, their entire profit will be destroyed. And so that's really where business kind of tied up with the episode. And I actually really liked how this episode took an ending with a business kind of point of view on it, which does really seem really strange. However, I really enjoyed the plot, because I really liked how oxygen was used as a currency, and spacesuits were actually not just the thing that keeping you intact and keeping you alive, but they were actually the thing that were actually going to kill you. And that's really ironic in this episode, where something like this just generally doesn't really happen. That something that we rely on so much in our day-to-day lives, oxygen, and we are put inside spacesuits where they're actually keeping us alive, but then when our oxygen eventually runs out, they eventually kill us. And that's something that's really different, that I would never really think that would actually happen. So overall, I thought that the plot was just absolutely ingenious. It was really fascinating and really interesting to see how it took a very much capitalism side on how human life is not worth anything now, since how everyone's going to die. And I really liked how the Doctor explained capitalism side, a bit more of that, and then it really explained more about how the business kind of side with the ending and how it tied up with the plot. And the plot really took a very business kind of direction, which Doctor Who doesn't really do that really much, but I thought it was original. The plot was certainly unique and original. I felt that the plot, the characters, and also the entire tone and the feel of this episode was very much of a Base Under Siege kind of episode. Like, I really love these type of episodes, the Base Under Siege kind of content, where you're stuck in one place and you have villains or monsters coming out from every single direction. You feel so compact and so, you know, isolated in one place and, you know, in one position that you can't really go anywhere. I feel like that's absolutely a fantastic point, and I really will class this episode as a fantastic Base Under Siege episode. It was so fantastic. Many people kind of felt that this episode was quite okay, I don't know, but overall, I thought the majority of everybody thought that this episode was just so brilliant. I thought Nardole, especially Nardole, was just so brilliant in this episode. I really loved Bill and her reactions for her being killed, almost being killed off in this episode, reacting to all of the danger and all of the experience and what space is really like. And I liked how the Doctor really gave a real in-depth kind of explanation on how space is really like within that lecture. I really like the Doctor doing lectures, and I think the way that the Doctor does that in the university really gives us a really in-depth kind of explanation to his Doctor, that the speeches and the lectures that he makes are really essential, and it really gives us a true definition and true explanation on what the Doctor's talking about. And I really understand him through his speeches and through his lectures, and he's absolutely fantastic during this episode. He's really authoritative, he's really confident with his work and how to solve the problem. And although he's quite a maniac and like, are you out of your mind? Well, yes, I know, but that's not a recent thing. That's generally basically the Doctor. And although the Doctor's very sarcastic towards Nardole, like, I thought I told you to get to Birmingham for a packet of crisps, but basically pointed this thing out like, do you know what this is? If it's not crisps, you're sacked. I'll absolutely cracked at that point. I absolutely loved that funny little sarcastic line. If it's not crisps, you're sacked. It's just only one line that really laughs me up. I really love that line. I'm just seriously going to get the Doctor a new packet of crisps. But anyway, I don't feel that the Doctor is a big fan of, you know, any sort of crisps that I would give him. Maybe ready salted crisps, I don't know. But one thing he does like, he certainly has a fun fact for food, to be honest. He likes Chinese, but why did he give Mexican? I don't know. But that just felt really strange from Knock Knock. He likes Chinese, but he brought Mexican instead. He likes a variety of foods, I know he does. But anyway, I thought this episode overall, that the writing was just so spot on from Jamie Mathieson. I loved how the tone of the episode was a very Base of the Siege episode. It was very dark, really creepy, and it was very black. And that the entire place was surrounded in space, where it's just a complete black void of nothingness. And I really like how space became the real threat in this episode. It's something that Doctor Who has always done. They've picked out the one thing that seems very plain and simple, but they've really expanded it, and they really made space the actual threat, the actual monster in this episode, which really intrigues me. And I love the idea of the oxygen and how the spacesuits are merely the irony in this episode, keeping us intact and keeping us alive within, you know, outer space, within the vacuum. But when our oxygen runs out, they actually kill us and get rid of us, because they want to save the oxygen as so much as possible. They want to consume and preserve the oxygen for a long period of time. And how they do that is just they reject the matter that's already in the spacesuits, and basically the spacesuits kill their own the people within the spacesuits, and that's really ingenious. I have to say that's absolutely an ingenious plot twist. So I think for this series, I think the plot is absolutely the strongest so far within series 10. Absolutely the strongest so far. And I thought Peter Capaldi, Bill, and especially Nardole was absolutely fantastic in this episode. Of course, I did say Nardole was absolutely fantastic. His auditiveness was really different, and I saw his actual purpose for once, which I was really intrigued by. I thought that the Doctor was absolutely fantastic, although he didn't really see what he was doing when he was blind, but I saw that his courage and his determination to solve the problem and to save everybody, and that's really what the Doctor does. And I think Peter Capaldi is just so fantastic, and just the way that I gave that little explanation of how he became blind. I really feel like a professor right now. I should have really taken science, to be honest, but oh well, unfortunately I didn't really, to be honest. Anyway guys, I think that really concludes this episode, but I need to give an overall rating. I feel like this episode has been on the level of every other episode that I've reviewed. So I'm going to give this episode a 9.5 out of 10 as well. It's very much to the same rating as Thin Ice and Knock Knock. These three episodes so far have been absolutely brilliant so far. Thin Ice, Knock Knock, and also Oxygen. But I think Oxygen kind of really edges up in the ratings for me a bit, because I feel Oxygen has a bit more in depth to it. And also I really do like Thin Ice as well. And then I would have to say, of the 3 episodes that I like that have been so fantastic, Oxygen's probably my favourite. Then I would have to say Thin Ice, because I really loved that episode. And then Knock Knock. And then I would have to say The Pilot. And then eventually at last place, Smile, which obviously seems to everybody's point of view. However, many people would be controversial when it comes to Knock Knock, as that was a very controversial episode. But I have to say that this episode has really delivered on brilliant writing, brilliant direction, brilliant characters, or well, actually, should I say the Doctor, Bill and Nardole. I wouldn't say the supporting characters were absolutely brilliant. I would say they were just really, just likeable or okay. Or just okay, to be honest. I felt that the creepy zombies were really, really creepy, and I thought their direction was just really, really good. I loved the plot. The plot was just so ingenious. And I felt that the entire episode had a very much based on the Siege kind of content. And I really, really like that in these sort of episodes. Based on the Siege is one kind of idea that I absolutely love in Doctor Who episodes, and I think they really need to do more based on the Siege episodes, like Under the Lake, The Ark in Space, Horror Fan Rock. All these other episodes that have a base on the Siege feel to them really, really excites me. And guys, we are halfway through series 10, which is just so amazing. We're already 5 episodes in, and it's already becoming one of the best series that we could possibly have for any series of Doctor Who. I would have to say that the strongest series so far has to be this series, to be honest. It's been absolutely so strong and so brilliant so far. Let's just hope it doesn't disappoint us, and I don't think Extremis will definitely not disappoint us. I feel that episode will be so brilliant, so I'm really cannot wait. But also Missy is going to be in this episode too, which I'm really, really looking forward to. That's really going to be one of the best things, and I'll explain a bit more when it comes to the preview when we do for Extremis. Anyway guys, thank you for watching for this review on Oxygen. I hope you have enjoyed it. Unfortunately it was a bit long, but I really had to explain much of my in-depth feelings about this episode, because I think this episode has been my favourite so far out of series 10. It's been absolutely my favourite so far. Although it has the same rating as all the other 3 out of the 3 previous episodes, Thin Ice, Knock Knock and Oxygen, I would have to say Oxygen has been my favourite so far, to be honest. And make sure you give a like on this video, but also comment down below on what your thoughts were on Oxygen. And make sure you do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time for my preview on Extremis. And make sure before I go, save your breath. Next time you go into space, preserve your breath. Relax or you die. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.